Welcome to Spoilers Intended, a podcast about series, novels, and films. For this episode, we're going to a rumble where military might will stumble, the characters definitely don't mumble, and allegiances may crumble. That's right, we're talking Mobile Suit Gundam, 08th MS Team. Hey everybody, welcome to the show. I'm Stephen Ford, joined as always by Andrew Killingsworth.
I don't even know what.
What's
I'm
happening?
so taken aback by what just happened.
Oh no!
Hello
and Joel
there.
Knuckles.
Why is this happening to me?
God, I do not like that. I don't like that at all.
Got them both. You see, if I change the order, it only throws one of you off because the other one knows what's coming. If I do that, it just ruins both of you. Perfect.
I feel ruined.
Yes, you should. Alrighty, well,
man.
as we brought up before a brief interlude
Wait,
there.
that's live? We're not retaking that?
Oh no,
Oh, no.
Okay.
we are on this train.
The rest of this episode's going to be amazing.
Yeah, it is. Little punch drunk. Let's go. So, as I mentioned before that brief interlude, we are talking Mobile Suit Gundam 08th MS Team.
Our first anime review.
Our first anime review. Get hype.
And just for the record, my name is Joel Killingsworth. So, yeah.
Joel is super offended. He's not one to be brought into your family.
No, but like, okay, so I am just perusing the internet and I find, Spoilers Intended podcast. They're a media review. Oh, I really liked 08th MS Team. I'm going to listen to that episode and see what they have to say to see if their interests align with mine. Okay, so we've got
Why are they
Stephen
laughing at the
Ford,
names?
and we've got Andrew Killingsworth, and we've got Joel Knuckles. That sounds like a nice bunch of guys.
Fine. Andrew Knuckles.
Hello
Joel
there.
Killingsworth.
Hi.
There we go. There. You satisfied now? You happy? You feel restored?
I am less destroyed.
All right. Wonderful. Well, I mean, destruction is a great theme for this episode because we are talking war. And to kick that off, before we go too far down the anime rabbit hole, we're going to take a look at some war movies. And we each kind of went in and selected from some different eras, maybe covering some different wars.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we're going to go from past to present.
Okay, cool.
So
I get to go last.
Send this off to Joel.
Okay, so
Yeah, you actually know what age yours is from, so yeah, never mind.
Well, I know when his movie was released and mine was released after it. So I'm relying on the fact that his movie wasn't released about a future war.
It was not.
That's true.
Yeah,
I'm going
out.
with the World War II classic released in 1961, The Guns of Navarone.
Great film.
This is based on Alistair MacLean's novel of the same title, and it stars David Niven and Gregory Peck, among many other stars. Just the two most notable names.
Gregory Peck was the main character in Killing Mockingbird.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so this follows the story of a group of saboteurs that have been collected across the Allies in World War II to go on a mission to destroy two artillery emplacements that the Germans have on the island of Navarone at the mouth of the Mediterranean Sea.
Mm-hmm.
Because there are troops that are stranded on an island in the Mediterranean that the Allied forces are trying to get ships in to evacuate them, but they have not been able to get their ships past these guns.
Mm-hmm.
And the Germans are launching an offensive that are going to come to this island and wipe these people out. And so we have a very short time in which we can, do something about these guns, get the evacuation ships into the Mediterranean, get everyone out and get away.
Mm-hmm.
And so the story is about the individuals that are selected to go on this mission behind enemy lines and destroy these gun emplacements by a specific time so that the Allied ships can make their way into the Med safely.
Yeah.
And, it's got a lot of kind of heist film tropes along with it because it's a very carefully selected team we have a demolitions expert, we have a mountain climbing expert. We've got someone who's good with knives. We've got someone who's really good with guns, and we got all of this kind of stuff where everybody brings their own skill and has their own backstory and stuff, and the way that they connect to the caper, as it were. But it also is very definitely a war movie where you have the mission and you have the very real stakes of, well, anytime we run into the other side, there's going to be bullets flying, so somebody's probably going to die. So it's really, really good. The runtime is a little on the long side. It's like 2 hours and 38 minutes runtime.
For a 1960s film, that's actually pretty long.
That's really long, yeah.
And but I would say that if you enjoy World War II war movies, this is definitely one to check out if you haven't.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and that's a good sell to me, because I prior to this, I had never heard of this movie, actually, which is kind of a little surprising.
That actually is pretty surprising.
Yeah. And you're like, oh yeah, we're going to do war. I'm like, well, I'm going to know it's, I don't, what?
Yeah.
Because it's been a long time since I've seen the film, probably since I was in high school. But I still remember it being really good. And I think the reason I watched it was because it had Gregory Peck in it. Yeah. And because his performance in To Kill a Mockingbird was just fantastic. And I'm assuming that he brings those chops over.
He does
from that into this film.
Yeah. So his character in this film is not supposed to be the leader of the group, but very early on, the leader gets incapacitated by being wounded.
Yep. And guess what?
He has to lead this group, but he's got interpersonal problems with several of the members.
Always.
And so just, that kind of shenanigans ensue.
Yeah.
Shenanigans, huh? Okay, well, speaking of shenanigans, for my offering, I have Platoon.
Ooh.
Yeah, so this is...
I haven't heard that name in a long time.
Right? So this is one of those that I feel like, because it's Vietnam, and it gets lumped in the same category as Full Metal Jacket a lot, and is somewhat overshadowed by it. However, it is a really great movie. And we're just going to start out, I'm going to run down some cast members here. So we've got Charlie Sheen, we've got Tom Berenger, we have Willem Dafoe, we have Forrest Whitaker, and also John McGinley, who I don't know if y'all recognize that or not. He's the mean doctor in Scrubs.
I've never seen Scrubs, so I have no idea.
But you have some idea. The gift, no.
Oh, is he the older guy?
He's not
kind of tall.
Yeah, he is kind of tall.
Yeah.
And then also in a role minor enough that I don't remember who he actually is in the movie, Johnny Depp.
Oh, so this was a non-comedic. I've never seen this film, but I have heard of it. It is Full Metal Jacket approximation.
Right. It is not comedic at all. It is R-rated. Came out in 1986.
Well, I just asked because Charlie Sheen's in it.
Right. Yeah, I know. Also Willem Dafoe.
Yeah.
Usually there's comedy elements. But no, this is very much so. I'm actually going to cheat and just grab like a plot summary out of IMDb, just because I think that this is kind of a simple and good
explanation.
Yeah.
Summary.
Yeah, it's almost like these people do it professionally or something. So Chris Taylor, Charlie Sheen's character, a neophyte recruit in Vietnam. He drops out of college to sign up for war. So this is early in the Vietnam War, or relatively early. Actually, I shouldn't even say it's decently early. So it's enough that there are still people who want to go.
Late 60s.
Yeah, 67 is when it's set. Finds himself caught in a battle of wills between two sergeants. So he's in this platoon. They have two sergeants who are kind of the leader and co-leader or whatnot. And basically one is good and one is not good. So there's this conflict between the two leaders of, well, one of them believes they need to have better outreach with the villagers and the locals. And the other one believes the villagers and the locals are responsible for hiding the VC
insurgents
and the cause of all of their troubles.
Yeah. And
so this tension, because initially Charlie's character he's new and he is super disrespected because he has no real combat experience. He doesn't know how to fight. They're doing these patrols and stuff in the jungle where you never know what's going to pop up where, and you get disoriented really easily, and everyone needs to trust each other to come out of these honestly terrible fighting situations. Well, this breaks down once the bad sergeant crosses a line, and all of a sudden you have the platoon kind of splintering, and no one can really trust each other. And suddenly it's not just, hey, we're out on patrol, because it's the military, you're sent on patrol. And it becomes this question of, well, not do I trust the bush over here, but do I trust the guy in front of me or behind me, and the effect that has on Charlie Sheen's character over time. And well, how do you choose what camp, or how do you like handle these, political essentially pressures and stuff? And how does that reflect on your life? Because you're here. This is, you signed up, you're committed. You could very easily die from all kinds of different bullets. So
they don't have to be enemy bullets.
No, not at all. And it can completely be an accident. But it's a pretty stressful, pretty, kind of psychological thing going on. Because again, any kind of combat in a scenario like Vietnam, where it's the jungle and, any bush, any tree could be a trap, could have a sniper, et cetera. There's already that heightened level of stress. But then when you move into the whole realm of, well, do I even trust the people out here with me? It ramps up a lot.
Yeah.
So anyways, I'll leave it at that and pass it off to Andrew.
Yeah. I mean, I'm always down to watch a good war film, and that, I mean, I'm not a big Charlie Sheen fan, but I'm definitely a big fan of William Dafoe. Yeah,
well, I knew looking at the cast, because I was like, okay, I know Charlie Sheen, I know Dafoe. I was like, well, I know one of those is probably not everyone's selling point, and the other one, if it isn't your selling point, it should be.
Yeah, I mean, William Dafoe's a fantastic actor,
phenomenal actor.
Yeah. Okay, so I am going all the way to modern and then all the way back to 1917. That came out 2019. So
the year 1917.
Yeah,
the year and the name of the movie.
Yep. So 1917 is the film. It takes place during World War I, and it basically follows two privates, I believe.
I actually don't recall their rank.
I can't remember. I'm pretty sure they say their rank, but I can't remember. So two characters.
They are low on the totem pole.
Yes, yeah, they are not any kind of commanding officer, and they are given the task to basically go over into essentially German territory and deliver a message to one of their forward battalions.
Man, you keep throwing this to me. I think it's considered a forward. It's either a forward regiment, forward battalion, but is the tip of the spear for an upcoming planned invasion based off of intelligence, basically.
And essentially, the intelligence was wrong, and the Germans are kind of pulling back to create a feint so they can crush this forward spear for the British Army. So you are following these two characters through basically no man's land into an abandoned section of German trenches, and then through basically their artillery line into kind of the countryside to where they're basically trying to reach their front line kind of brigade.
And deliver the message.
And deliver the message to say, hey, don't go on this offensive.
Right.
This is a trap.
Yeah. And it's one of those interesting things, because most of the time that World War I is presented to you, it is straight up just trench on trench, and they could be straight lines drawn by a ruler. And this movie is much more aware of the fact that the trenches kind of moved in and out. They kind of, you have little bulges, and they move with the contour of the land, and they're just spaces where you could just be, and there's not just trenches, but over that hill is dangerous.
Yeah. So it follows these two characters, and the film is shot like a single shot, meaning, or a single take. So essentially what that means is there are no visible cuts in the cinematography as it is happening. This is directed by Sam Mendes, and from the beginning shot of the opening sequence all the way to the end of the film, with the climactic kind of experience of him, kind of running down this front line, there is essentially no visible cuts. Now you can, if you have a keen eye, you can catch some of these cuts here and there. But the way that it is shot creates this really high level of intensity that the tension never really goes away that a traditional film would do. Because a lot of times whenever there's a very intense emotional scene, then there's a jump cut to something that is substantially less intense and emotional to help you kind of relieve that pressure, to where whenever you go back to that scene or those characters that something bad just happened, then you have a little bit more time to kind of recollect your thoughts.
Yeah.
Where this does not do that. And it it basically just takes you and it holds you and stares at you in the face for like 2 hours.
Yeah.
And it says, I'm not going to let you go until I let you go.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just the sheer effort and I mean, honestly, just masterwork that they did to make this be quote unquote a one shot where they're doing a scene where they're going, through a bunch of mud down into a crater hole that's full of water, wading, kind of half swimming through that and then back up the other side. And this is broad daylight. The camera sticks with them the whole way. And in the behind the scenes, it's, one dude is carrying the camera and he attaches it to the dolly as it's going by. And then they hand it off to the boom. And then it goes, they have bits where they're carrying it by hand and they clip it to the boom as the truck is moving at a walking pace next to them. And the truck lifts, the boom goes up. And it comes over and it comes down and another guy accepts the camera from the truck and they keep going.
Yeah.
Well,
it's incredible.
And then they take that camera from the boom and then they hop onto the back of of like a motorcycle kind of dirt bike thing so they can follow the character as he's running through from oncoming enemy fire. And then they take that and they take it off and they follow him into like the, like these kind of ruins of a town. It is fantastic cinematography, but honestly, like you don't even the cinematography makes it what it is, but then it also like the actual story itself is still very compelling, and the actors themselves just do such a good job at essentially just being a two-man show.
Yeah, and it's very much so. It's really impressive how well they can kick, because the camera's just on them for minutes and minutes and minutes at a time. This isn't a traditional film setting where action, cut, line, cut. Like you got to know what you're going to say. You got to know how to react,
where you're going to be, how fast you need to move. Yeah. Like, oh man, it is a fantastic film. If you haven't seen it, it is very intense. It is very intense. Just straight up. You will if war movies are not your thing, this is probably not going to be your movie.
It's going to be a hard watch. If you like war movies, if you really like the concept of, just kind of appreciating the effort that they went through this, it's definitely a watch once. Like even for me, it's kind of almost like that's a hard sell for me to rewatch it, but I'm really glad I watched it the one time.
Yeah. Like we watched it in IMAX, and then we bought the Blu-ray and we watched it again. And then after that, I'm like, I think I'm good for a while.
Yeah, this is not a, hey, we're hanging out on Friday night, just throw it in. And nope, that's not how this movie works.
No, not one of those kind of films. Okay, all right. So
moving forward to the actual topic of this episode, Mobile Suit Gundam 08th MS Team. I'm having so much fun saying the whole title.
Well, it has to be the whole title, because if someone wants to go and look up 08th MS Team, it will pop up, but
you have to look a little.
You have to look a little, because Mobile Suit Gundam is technically the
first three words of the title.
Yeah.
So if you're looking on mobile, then those are going to be the only words you see.
Yeah, that's all you get. Yeah. Yeah, if you're looking through a library of Gundam, they're basically all Mobile Suit Gundam and then something.
It's like, wait, are these the same show? What's happening?
They don't even look like that. Has wings. Anyways, so Joel, you want to give us a little synopsis?
I'm so interested.
I'm very intrigued.
So a little synopsis. So we come into the show with the setup that there is a war between a faction called the Federation and a faction called the Zeons. And our heroes that we are introduced to early on are on the Federation side. And they are on a transport ship headed to Earth to join the war. And our main character is a young officer who is about to be assigned to lead a small team.
Platoon.
Well, no, definitely not.
It's just a team.
It's a team. It's got 5-6 people in it. And they're set in kind of a jungle terrain area of Earth. It's not explicitly defined where this is.
It's Southeast Asia.
Yeah.
It never really, they don't just say, welcome to Laos or Cambodia or whatever. Yeah.
And so over the course of the next days and weeks, they engage in combat missions. They deal with local rebels who are not really on anybody's side. They just want the people who are fighting to not be in their villages anymore. They deal with the enemy, and they're right from the start. There is the main kind of thrust of the show is introduced where even before they make it to Earth, our main character Shiro engages in a heroic act to save a stranded Gundam pilot, and kind of interacts with an enemy, but they both end up disabled and kind of sort of stranded in space. And the theme of, well, there's no objective to be fighting over at the moment, and so we really just need to cooperate so we both don't just die out here. And so that kind of theme gets expressed early and then gets carried through the remainder of the show, and jungle combat and other hijinks ensue.
Yeah.
Nailed it.
Yeah. That's pretty close.
Yeah. I almost feel like I'm obligated to point out the difference between a mobile suit versus a Gundam, but I don't know if I can be that.
Well, in the show, so they did not differentiate.
Yeah, so basically just a quick history lesson.
Sure.
That you didn't get. So for anyone listening at home,
actually, hold on. I'm going to wait until we get into spoiler stuff, because I do have to say kind of specifics. Okay,
and that's totally fine. We can break that. It's not really relevant to thing, but just for everyone listening, I am going to point out. So for Joel, this is a first introduction to, I think, any of Gundam.
Yes.
Okay. Andrew, seasoned anime fan, loves Gundam. This isn't maybe his top.
It's not my top. It's within the top 5, probably top 3. Zeta Gundam's my all-time favorite. Not Double Zeta. Just
don't bring up doubles. We don't talk about Double Zeta. And then for me, this is
the quintessential
peak Gundam.
Yeah.
So just so we get kind of a level, because I think we did this way back for the Cowboy Bebop, and it was actually the exact same arrangement.
Well, I've watched a lot of anime. That's kind of like my main media that I watch. So I have a lot of exposure to it.
Yeah.
Where I know you guys have varying, much smaller levels of anime exposure, where Joel actually probably has watched more than Steven at this point.
Really? I would actually be really impressed if that were true.
I'm pretty sure he has.
I'd be really impressed if that were true, actually.
Okay, anyways,
that is not relevant to what we're doing here, which is we're going to discuss a couple little scores.
Yeah,
it's time for the scores. He gave a synopsis.
He did give us a synopsis.
I synopsisized.
Stick to the format, people.
Stick to the plan.
So, looking at the technical review score, which is an average across our 4 pillars of review, being spectacle, performance, score, and plot. Kind of average. We each gave each of those a score and just averaged it all right up. And we came to an 8.1 out of 10 for the show. So
pretty solid.
Very, very solid technical review score.
Yep. It is a very, this is definitely one of those entry point shows for people that want to get into Gundam, but then also kind of want to get into anime as well. There is a lot of good entry points with this one, because the quality of animation is very high. It's relatively episodic in sense, so you can kind of pick up an episode and you don't need too much context, where if you like it's like a half serialized, because it's more an anthology, I guess, is a better explanation.
I don't know. I'm trying to think back through, and the series itself is short enough at being 11 asterisk 12 episodes that if you start cutting full episodes, I think you start missing pieces of the story.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah, I actually don't think that you can just drop in and pick it up. Like, it is compact enough that you can drop into this without having started with the original Gundam.
Yes, you definitely don't have to have any prior knowledge of the Gundam universe as a whole.
Yeah, there's going to be some terms that are just kind of techno babble or just generic. Oh, that's just a faction that may not have the same meaning, per se. But to understand what's actually just going on and the conflicts involved, you don't need any foreknowledge, I guess. So for me, I mean, this is one of, it's not one of the only, we actually discussed this earlier, but it's one of the few Gundam series that, one, the characters are aged up a little bit. which I think makes a huge difference for especially someone my age watching these shows. So I could definitely point to that as something that I would appreciate, and it plays through in a lot of the themes and the plot points. And then also, it feels very military. I mean, we just kind of talked, war movies, right? Get into this, and I brought up Platoon, Vietnam, and this is Gundam Vietnam, and that is a common comparison because you have those same themes of, well, you just don't know where the enemy is. Yeah. It's so hard in space. They're flying around, they have thrust trails, and that's a really big ship. They must be right there in the jungle because these robots are big. They're not that big that they just tower over trees and stuff. So it's still possible to hide and surprise, and you get so much more of that tension. Going back to 1917 here, and kind of the fear, and they have night fights and these kinds of things. And I think that really, really ramps up the feel and how realistic it feels, and how concerning the stakes can be, I guess.
Yeah. And sorry, Joe, you can go. Oh, okay.
No, I was just, yep.
But,
no, I'm
so
Joel's just vibing over here.
the show has always been kind of considered one of the more realistic approaches to the Gundam universe.
Yeah.
Where if you're familiar with something like Gundam Wing, where a lot of the technology and the way that they approach fights and everything is much more on a larger scale, where one suit is taking on 20 guys or 20 other mobile suits at the same time. Where this is a considerably smaller scale, to where there's maybe only one suit, possibly two, that they're fighting at the same time. And it really gives you the sense of one, how complicated the machines are, but then also how dangerous just one unit can possibly be compared to a platoon or a team of smaller people that may or may not be experienced enough to actually fight effectively.
Yeah. And I think in addition to the jungle combat really giving a good backdrop to the action, because there's so much cover everywhere that it's really easy to get snuck up on. But you also have a really great cast of characters to play around with in that situation, because you've got kind of the quintessential bright-eyed, a little naive young officer.
I just have to interject for a second. Shiro Amada is every anime protagonist ever.
He's not, though. He has a character arc.
but it's the bright-eyed ideal. He's maybe not as good as he could be.
But the thing is, he's actually competent,
driven.
right?
He's reasonably, but he's not necessarily like the best of the best, recognized name. Sure. He's just a person.
But you've got that playing off with the older, more experienced NCOs that are used to going through commanders, right? They'll come in, they'll get burned out because this is a terrible place, and they'll get killed or they'll get injured and they'll get shipped out
off to Looney Bin.
And then we'll just get the next one, And so you've got that really fun dichotomy of characters to work with while you have character growth, and then, different story arcs for the different characters going through. So it's a really enjoyable set of characters. It's a really enjoyable setting. It gives kind of the mecha genre a really great kind of grit and grounding. So yeah,
it is 2022, and I am watching a darker,
grittier Gundam.
But we also have another score that we use separate from the technical review, and that is our entertainment value,
right?
Because it is conceivable. And, I'm going through this every time we do this.
I know.
It is
one day it's gonna happen.
It is conceivable that these scores be very different, right? You have something that maybe is not that great from a technical perspective, but you know what? You just really love it. And it is very entertaining. And so, or the reverse can be true. And so these values do not have to be the same. In this case, they are. We gave the technical review an 8.1, and we're giving the entertainment score an 8. So
it slips ever so slightly, but it's basically the exact same.
Yeah.
One day we are going to split these scores. We're gonna have to.
It will happen, but you have to have a true entertainment level score, because even then, like if I don't enjoy something but you enjoy something a lot, like that is like you even out that score where like sometimes theme just isn't like, or the setting just isn't your thing.
Yeah, it just doesn't hit right.
And something that does play into this, you know, if you are, because we're coming up on the intermission soon, if you're not going to hang around, the things that you might want to know going into, well, do I want to watch this, right? Some things to consider are the fact that it is has an MA mature TV rating.
Yeah, this is a mature show. Yeah, you need to be aware.
There's lots of cursing and there's lots of violence and there's some nudity involved. So definitely things to be aware of.
Yeah, I'm glad you threw that in, because if you didn't, I was going to, because that any time that I tell someone you should watch this, here are some caveats.
Yeah.
Yeah, there, like it was made in 1996, and there 95, 90. Well, no, I mean it was
that was when it started.
That is when it started. Yeah. We'll get into that. But there are definitely some anime tropes that do exist in this show that you do need to be well aware of. There. You know, there's definitely some nudity here and there. There are, a decent amount of violence, not a lot of blood, but a lot of hinted violence. And not really a show you should watch with your kids unless they are mature enough to understand what they are watching. Yeah.
As someone with kids, this is not something you should
someone with young kids. Young kids.
There you go. But look out. The Zeeks laid a trap, and they're going to hit us with spoilers. On your way back to base, if you liked what you heard, check out our other content at spoilersintendedpodcast.com. On the other hand, if you want to face the spoilers ahead by our side, don't worry, we're all making it back alive, and that's an order.
Alrighty, everyone, welcome back. Hope you enjoyed a little bit of a break, a little intermission. And now we are ready, set, and go to dive right on into our first pillar of review, and that is going to be spectacle. So for this being an animated show, the animation, I said that word a lot in a row,
front and center,
is going to factor into the score a lot. But for a general category, this is kind of the things that are the wow moments, how much of an emotional reaction you're going to have to what's going on screen, these kinds of things.
Yeah, how do the action scenes track well? Do they, do they hit you whenever, something gets blown up, or, you
feel like you were there. The cinematography works, which again, it's animation, but that is still a valid thing, because if you don't set the invisible camera properly in animation, you're going to confuse the living daylights out of people.
Yeah.
So that's a very important consideration. So I'm curious as to how to start this one off, actually.
I want to hear what Joel says.
We want to hear what Joel?
Okay, well, I'm going to start off fairly high. I gave it an 8 out of 10. I thought that the animation style, which is perhaps just a little dated, I mean, it's back in the mid-90s, really holds up really well, actually. And it's very easy to follow the characters and through their dialogue and stuff like that through the animation. The fight scenes were really interesting. The visual design of the mech suits was really fun. And it was fun to watch them move around, particularly in the jungle environment, like we talked about before the intermission. It just made, it's kind of a mixed bag, right? Because the jungle environment made everything really cool from a tactical perspective. But on the flip side, you have everybody on, at least for the first 2/3 of the show, everybody on one side is piloting the same type of mech. So they all look identical. And everybody on the other side is piloting the same type of mech. So they all look identical.
Yeah.
So whenever you have a 2v2 or a 3v2 or whatever, whenever you kind of mix it up at the squad level and the characters are like, oh, watch out. And then you swap to one green mech hitting one white mech, and you're like, I don't know who anybody is because they're not unique. Because if you look at character designs, those are all really good. They pass silhouette tests. You know immediately who anybody is once you see them. But the mechs don't have that.
Yeah, they actually, this is again, one of the, I don't want to call it rare, but you have a phenomenon in Gundam where the selling point is the hero mech, so it stands out. So you always know who the main character is. And then you have the grunts, and they all look the same, and that's okay because they're all about to die anyways. Yeah. This one, it has that more military feel because everyone it's a uniform, right?
And like that's realistic.
It's just hard to tell the story,
but it is really hard to tell. And so I would have appreciated some more, I don't know, decal changes on them.
They do actually have numbers on the
really
shoulder.
Small.
You're not going to catch it in the middle of action.
Well, and that also means that doesn't mean that they're going to animate those specific decals every single time it's on the screen. So there actually is a very small like differentiator, but it's not something that you would ever notice. It's something that people that build the models would notice.
Sure.
Is basically the horns will have different colors.
I did really like the fact that after Karen gets ambushed at the lake at the beginning of the climax, right? And her head and the sensor center in the thing gets punched off, right? And then after that they do a slap job and repair her suit, and it's just a sensor package head from a completely different model of mobile suit, and that was really cool. I like that.
Well, and then they poke fun at it of like, hey, GM head, come over here, and she's like, okay, I get it.
Yeah. I think the one other piece that I really, really loved was the inclusion of a sensor truck as just part of the team.
It's such a good addition
because there's just no visibility, right? And so they have to have the support unit to be able to coordinate their actions and actually get any intelligence on where the enemy is. And the primary sensor that they use is actually drilling a rod into the earth and measuring vibrations. And so they have kind of a almost submarine listening station, which is just a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, they do so much with the hover truck that you do not get in basically any other Gundam ever. Nothing is going to feel that way, and it is one of the more iconic and differentiating parts of it. And they do such a good job of building tension with it, where your Elidor is focused on his headset. And he's
trying to figure out the elevator is just so good.
Yeah, he's like, I've heard this sound before. But that element, especially because, like you said, most of the fighting is jungle based, and there is the first mission is at night. Like there's just no visibility really. I
just got to interject one more thing. This is totally minor and really didn't affect my score whatsoever. It just really made me laugh. And that was when they were running through the final boot up check for the Absolus in the climactic double episodes. And there was a screen with a bunch of different subsystems on there. And DirectX SDK made the list. I loved it so much.
There are several things in there where it's like, oh, I know that program.
It's like, in the far future where we have giant battle mechs, we're still using DirectX.
And it's only version 4.
Well, and they had to figure out how to boot the DVD drive for it.
Oh man.
All right, you want to go next? You want me?
You can go.
Okay. So for Spectacle, I gave it a 9. And similar to what you said, the animation is good. It is a little dated. I mean, it is from the mid 90s, and it was not maybe the most impressively budgeted TV show. It was not. It wasn't
a. So
it was not original Mobile Suit Gundam levels of budget where where they just never had money.
Yeah. Well, so this actually wasn't a TV broadcast.
Right.
This was an OVA, which is called Original Video Animation. And what that means is essentially it is DVDs at the time are released with 1 or 2 episodes on them, and then they basically release the series over the course of a year, or just so they can basically spend the time to animate everything to the quality that they want to be, instead of a broadcast schedule where it's like you have 12 weeks, make it happen.
Yeah. So there is more to work with, but it is also not like a crushingly high budget movie.
I mean, there's still some off model shots.
There are a few transition shots and stuff where you're like, ooh, yeah, that's where they save money or save time. Beyond that, I mean, there are some highlights of animation. One of my personal favorite things in basically any anime, and especially I think older anime, when you get away from the CGI era, is whenever they do lasers, especially the Opsilus laser and the way it tracks.
Oh yeah.
That type of animation, because that pops up in a lot of other stuff, especially as you back up the time frame, looks so good. And it may just be a combination of like formative and nostalgia meeting, where to me it's just instantly recognizable as, oh, that's a laser. That is a problematic weapon as a beam.
Well, and the cool part is whenever it kind of draws the line in the sand, essentially, to, you know, Ina's saying, hey, don't cross this line, you know, otherwise you're going to die. It's really cool seeing they actually put in essentially the refresh rate of the laser based on like each of the little like kind of like dust clouds that kind of pop up as it's kind of moving across the ground.
Yeah.
Where it's they thought about, instead of just making just kind of like a line of smoke essentially, or dust, they actually thought about how often it would basically like the energy would pulse to hit that. And only reason I know that is just because I run lasers every day for cutting, and the frequency is actually very important based on how I need to cut a certain material.
Yeah.
You know, it does also have one of the most iconic individual fights in Gundam in it.
Yeah, it's probably up. It's definitely up there for me. It's probably within the top 10 for
it makes
general.
A lot of if you look around just for the general populace, or the general populace who is interested in anime and Gundam, it makes narrow that considerably. It makes a lot of lists, and there's a lot of people who are, you know, big fans. I also am obviously a big fan, just partly because of the stakes and how they're
which fight?
Norris.
Okay, yeah.
Norris versus the team.
Yeah.
So the team plus.
So I feel like I have been deferred long enough. What is the difference between a mobile suit and a Gundam?
Okay. Do you want me to go first, and then you can correct me? You
can go first, and I'll correct you. Sure.
So mobile suits are basically any of the robots that you saw on screen.
Yeah.
Except for the Opsilus is technically a mobile armor, which is just larger scaled. So like Azaku, the enemy, the Zeon, is a mobile suit. The GMs are mobile suits. The Gundams are mobile suits.
Oh, Gundam is a specific model. So which ones are Gundams?
What they are piloting. Okay, so this gets weird. So the reason it's
super pedantic.
Yeah, I know. The reason it's Mobile Suit Gundam, right, is the original unit, the Gundam, is the prototype that basically helps swing this war. And what they are piloting are mass-produced models that aren't actually that mass-produced, but they're based off of a bunch of the improvements from the original Gundam. So they're as close to a Gundam as you get in the show.
Okay.
Yeah.
But basically so when Karen's head gets destroyed and they replace it with the new head, that is just a GM. That's just a general production, mass-produced grunt unit, which is why she's getting made fun of by everybody else, because they're all piloting the high-tech, newer thing. And it shows up a lot in that it lets the pilots of the more enhanced suits kind of brute force their way, where some of the lesser suits just kind of die. So it helps them in the sense that they're just stronger in general. And it also, in the context of the larger universe, makes more sense, because you would see, oh, these improvements have really helped us. We should push this out to a larger band and actually make use of the fact that this gives us an advantage.
So one of the they kind of show this off a little bit in, I think, the second episode, whenever Sanders finally gets his hands on the new Gundam, basically, which is the RX-79. And so the first episode has him piloting a GM, which is just, general mass-produced kind of mobile suit. And he's going up against Ina, who's in a what they said is a modified Zaku.
Yeah.
So it's a probably better response time, better armor, that kind of thing. And then he gets his hands on a Gundam, and then he just like completely just decimates this Zaku. And he's like, "Oh, this is what this is like.
This is the power of a Gundam."
Yeah. And so essentially, like a little bit of a history lesson.
More so than
Zeon. So basically, the reason why Zeon were essentially winning the war, and in Mobile Suit Gundam, the actual Gundam kind of turned the tides, was Xeon was actually the first, the faction to actually make mobile suits.
Mm-hmm.
And they had that, and the Federation didn't have, they only had tanks, essentially, and just like air support. And so Xeon was far technologically superior, and they basically made a big push to try and take over Earth and everything. And then within that time, there was just enough resistance for the Federation to basically catch up with the Gundam, and then start using that technology to mass produce their own suits to basically try and hold them off. And basically the technology that the Gundam has was superior enough to just turn the tides enough until they could basically push them back off of Earth.
Yeah.
And the mobile suits themselves, like everything is a mobile suit, is essentially, and then a Gundam is a specific unit, kind of like what, because it's the type of armor that's used, which is Gundanium alloy. It's just unobtainium, whatever you want to call it. Doesn't matter.
But the big visual indicator is, generally speaking, the Gundams have the V-fin on the forehead, which is kind of because they are meant to imitate a samurai. So that is kind of the crest on the helmet.
Right.
And that's your visual cue in any show, not even just this one, but any of them. They all have it. And some of them have really fancy ones.
So anyways, if you watch like Gundam Unicorn, it's kind of one of those things where the mobile suit doesn't look like a Gundam until it basically transforms, and then like the final pièce de résistance is the unicorn basically splits into the horns for the Gundam. And it's a cool hero shot, but it's just kind of ridiculous.
Yeah.
Anyways, back to
I feel educated.
Joel's like, what did I do?
What have I done?
What have I done? But yeah, and like I said before, we got sidetracked on what things are, but it has one of the most iconic fights basically in all of Gundam. I mean, I can't point to many one-on-ones that live up to what that is, because it's not a one-on-one.
There are a couple really good other fights, but this is probably the most well animated and well choreographed fight that also has a lot of stakes to it.
Well, and it's literally Norris verse, and he's using the environment, using what he has available to him to take advantage.
To take advantage.
And particularly the part of the fight where he has disabled Shiro's suit, and he's basically holding him up as a screen against the other two, and being like, all right, your move.
Yeah.
And he broadcasts like, hey, the pilot's still alive.
Yeah.
Are you sure you want to do it?
Yeah.
And, and he knows, just based on how they've already acted now, like they're not willing to just kill one of their own just to get to him.
Well, I mean, also bonus, the thing he's holding in front of it probably has better armor than he does, so good shield.
Yeah, because the EZ-8 is a prototype unit.
It's an up-armored.
Yeah.
Anyways, Andrew, you need to give us a score.
Okay, so I gave Spectacle a 10. So, hey, wow, 8, 9, 10. Go figure.
Counting up.
So the kind of piggybacking off of the Shuddering Mountain fight, which is Norris versus the team. It's truly iconic and a great sequence. However, I like the fight in the desert more against the Apsilus.
Well, the whole desert episode, when we go into plot,
it's fantastic.
It's the highlight of the show, really and truly.
Because you have these. The thing that I love about this show is they thought about how the weapons affect things. So, whenever they go into kind of like the desert testing area, and Karen kind of goes down and she taps basically the score marks in the canyon, and she's like, oh, this turned it into glass. This is a very, very powerful beam weapon to be able to do this. And then they use and show all of the different mechanisms of how they're going to basically try and capture this thing with like little explosive balloons, and they have like a net to try and capture it. Then they think of so many different ways of practical ways of how you would actually fight,
because they've been exposed to it some, and they know that it's very fast, and they're trying to come up with ways of, well, how do we hem it in long enough that we can hit it?
Yeah.
And that's the whole, this whole drill, the exercise they go through.
Yeah. Well, and they also have to think of the air support that is following along this essentially experimental kind of unit. but even that, like, so we're talking about spectacle here, and the high amount of detail that they put into the Gundams, where up until this point, for the production of all the other series, you don't really get, like, every once in a while you'll get a couple like mechanical shots and things, but you never really get like a full sequence of it.
Gundam is still kind of feeling its super robot roots for most of that early era.
Yeah.
And then when you hit this, they suddenly they feel, this is something I was going to bring up if you didn't, because it's one of the big reasons, they feel like real machines.
Yeah. So the genre for Mobile Suit Gundam is real robot is kind of what it coined back in 1979. And because up until that point, it was all super robots. So it was like Mazinger and oh man, I'm not good on my super robot.
I was going to help, and you took the only way I could help.
But yeah, so like it kind of like defined the genre, and it still had some super robot elements. Like in the main series, there's a couple, like, most pilots have superpowers essentially. Where this, they take that scale down to where it's just a team of just normal guys or people that,
like, these could be fighter jets, and the story doesn't change too much.
Yeah, you lose something because you can't really recreate a jungle in wherever.
Yeah,
well, yeah,
but it's the same idea.
Yeah, it's the same general idea.
Voltron's kind of it's a super robot.
Yeah, it is
carryover. So that's probably the most familiar thing I can put out there.
But yeah, so just like I mean, all the fights just like they feel very grounded in reality, and just from the perspective of Gundam, you just never have had that before. So looking at this from the perspective of this is the first time that you watch a Gundam show, like, you're going to be kind of spoiled for any other Gundam that you watch, because a lot of them just kind of exist, and they never really kind of go over like the maintenance that is involved, or, hey, my ankle's acting up again, let's try and fix this and almost kill me.
Well, in a lot of Gundam takes place in space, where physics don't
really matter.
Well, it's a factor. It's just a different kind of, you don't have the same, like, heavy step, kicking up dust, and these kinds of things where you can really feel the weight of the robot. They just kind of float because they're in space.
Yeah. Okay, so we're going to move on a little bit to performance. Now, this is kind of hard to...
this is going to be an interesting category.
This is going to be an interesting category because I know I'm the only one that did this, but I watched it in the subtitle, original Japanese audio, and the English.
So you would actually be wrong.
No.
Yes.
No.
Yeah.
How am I wrong?
Because I've seen it in both.
Well, no, but like this specific viewing.
Well, I mean, I actually went back and...
Oh, we'll see.
I did not watch the whole thing in sub, but I definitely went back and played a couple of sub episodes just to get a feel for it, because it has been a little while.
Okay, well, fine. So for my performance, I gave the Japanese English or Japanese language audio track a 9 out of 10, and then I gave the English a 6 out of 10.
Okay.
So did you like combine those two scores when you put it in?
Yeah.
Okay. That's a cool approach. I didn't actually do that, but
yeah. So like the English is, unfortunately for the time of when this was dubbed, which was early 2000s, the quality of translations and the quality of just voiceover talent in general for basically anime translations, which wasn't big at the time, it's not the best.
No,
there's definitely I've talked about it before in Young Justice and maybe a couple other things where you just kind of have people talking at the screen with nothing really there behind it. And then there's definitely a couple standout scenes where, especially in the fight with Norris, they definitely took a lot more time, I think, and put a lot more emotion with it. For those kind of scenes, but there's definitely a lot of other episodes where there's just kind of nothing there, and it just doesn't really track. Now the Japanese language, honestly, like, and this is just coming from like a seasoned anime viewer, subs are better than dubs. I'm sorry,
the worst.
But you just get so much more emotion out of the characters, I feel, and I mean, I feel that all of them did a really good job. I mean, Shiro's probably the only one that gets a little bit grating. Well, okay, never mind. I take that back. Michael is probably the worst character out of all of them.
Just by default. I mean, he never had a chance.
He's specifically meant to be the whiny, kind of annoying character, kind of like Speedy or Wally from Young Justice.
Well, he is entirely different. I will fight you to the death.
It's a very different type of character. It's just aggravating.
He is a stand-in for what war does to the common person.
Oh, absolutely.
And so his complaints are there to highlight the conflict on that scale. And so, like, to say that he's being whiny trivializes the very real character. I mean, there is a bit of a character arc for him, but the very real portrayal of hardships that people go through.
Well, in the realization that there are definitely times, especially whenever he's trying to connect with Sanders, that like it's not always just about him.
Yeah.
And the desert episode with him talking with Kiki, but that's kind of like they both kind of realize each other in the sense of like, oh, you're going through a lot more stuff than I expected you to for both sides.
Yeah.
So I want to toss it over to Joel. I want to hear a performance.
Okay. Well, performance, I gave it an 8.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
And you only did dub, correct?
Yeah, I only did dubbed. So from my perspective, not being able to understand the spoken Japanese language, it being subbed is purely a downgrade because I only get the words. Like I don't get anything from the spoken.
You can get some kind of like scream or up and down out of it, but
that's totally fair.
Yeah.
Like there's like, and that's the thing too. I always say subs better than dubs, but I've also had, I've literally been watching anime since I was a kid, and that has been my main form of entertainment for basically my entire life.
Yeah.
And everything I've watched has pretty much always been in sub. So
yeah,
like I just have a different.
So your mileage may vary is the message here, but
yes,
I thought that the animation plays a large part in the performance score, and I thought that the character animation was really quite excellent. There was the visual characterization of the whole cast was really great, and then the emotion of the really the really driving scenes, which the standouts are the scene in the desert between Kiki and Mikkel, where they're both just kind of like initially not really engaging with each other, but then like over the course of the conversation, both kind of bearing their pain to one another was really well done. And
they're similar in age. So Kiki's 17 and he's 18.
Yeah. And then the other really emotional arc is of course the Shiro and Aina relationship and how that develops into kind of a philosophical treatise on war and the appropriate use of violence. And all this stuff, which really has a large emotional weight because you get invested in the characters. And so that all was done, reasonably well. I do agree that the voice actors didn't really add very much, but they did their job, and what they portrayed was really good. So that's where I get an 8 from.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's totally fair.
Yeah.
All right. Well, y'all are gonna make me feel bad. So I
gave it a 4.
No, I did not do that. So I definitely approached this kind of with caution because, again, we already established of the three of us, I'm the one that's probably the most invested. So it's like and I told y'all before this, like I changed my scores a lot because I put a score and be like, man, that was really harsh.
Yeah.
So having said that, and I only rated this on the dub.
Okay. Yeah, which is fine.
I just did not have time to watch both the whole way through. And I really just wanted to be like, am I really just underselling this much or what? So we'll watch a little bit in sub and just kind of remember, because there's always, with the translation, there's always going to be subtle differences in story too, or just the words that are used essentially.
Yeah.
But I have my own personal justification for dubs. Miyazaki gave me permission to watch it in dubs because he wants you to watch the animation, and that's what I'm here for.
Totally fine.
However, it is a 1995, 6, whatever show that wasn't English broadcast until like 2000, and US dubs are still pretty rough then.
Yeah.
I gave it a 6.
Yeah. I mean, I gave it a 6 too.
Yeah, no, when you said that, I was like, we're
the two scores.
Yeah, we're on track with each other, which, so for me, it's the weak translation. There are some things that whatever, I think it kind of sticks out to me as someone who has watched both versions of anime over a decent amount of time, where you're like, yeah, that's totally the literal translation.
But that's not what they said.
But that's not the right word for it. And it always kind of hits, it's kind of like that dull note, when you just hit the flat. Yeah. And that kind of always jars me out a little bit. And there's definitely some moments early on. And because there's always that risk, especially, again, kind of early, I don't want to say early era, but early-ish era of English dub becoming more common, where you present these voice actors with these scripts and they don't really know what's going on, per se. Like, nowadays,
they don't watch the show.
Yeah, right. Nowadays, someone goes into voice acting and they want to do English dubs. And that person grew up watching anime.
Yeah,
they understand when they say, "Oh, well, your robot fell." They understand what they want to put into this. So I think for me, you just kind of have this stilted bit. The animation still sells it, but kind of like what you said, that the character, the voice actor, doesn't necessarily rise up as far as the animation was. So I definitely was gonna ding it for that, and I knew it going in because there are specific moments that always stick to me. Some of them are really kind of sadly always Sanders. It feels like got the short end of the stick on some lines. Yeah,
but he's generally a one note character for most of the show.
Yeah, I mean he has a purpose.
He probably has the shortest arc. Yeah, or the smallest arc.
It's resolved very quickly.
Yeah.
But the big shining performances to me aren't the main characters. It's the lesser characters, like Admiral Yuri.
Yeah,
I love that character. Even though when you are first introduced to him, he is introduced as a jerk. He's still, and like because there's kind of always this weird interplay with Gundam where they're like, yeah, war bad, both sides bad, but here's some people that you can kind of respect on both sides. Yeah. And one of those is usually your main character. And then they have to throw in these other characters. So especially towards the end of the arcs with Admiral Yuri and
Norris.
Norris was always going to be that character. Yuri was not guaranteed to be that character. And also there's like just a couple of the random people in kind of Yuri's orbit who like there's it's the transport captain who like does the defense, right? Yeah. And faces off with Shiro. And they do a really good job of selling that kind of like, well, now you've hit the portion of the Zeon army that isn't the how do I say the word?
Just not authoritarian.
They're not the fascist regime representation. They're just the standard
They're
soldier
just a guy that
who
got
has
enlisted
their
into,
honor. Yeah. So they do a good job with it, and I think that those actors did a good job with their bits that they are given. I mean, Yuri definitely has his voice actor in the English definitely has that big, bold, boisterous, gregarious nature to him where he's still going to be serious, but come on, guys, let's pull it together. Let's go, Yeah. We're going to have a little bit of fun with this. I'm going to joke with you a little, even though I'm the admiral, I'm talking to a private or whatever.
His character specifically just wears his heart on his sleeve. Like, that he genuinely cares about the people in his company. And he wants them to be safe. He wants them to get back to space. Despite, they're in war and technically he is on the quotation marks bad side. But, at the end of the day, like he's still looking out for the best thing for his men and not necessarily like Guineas, who is only interested in whatever his success is.
Right. Well, and I mean, you get that direct comparison with the treatment of the soldiers at the base there towards the end.
Yeah.
Here, have some performance enhancing drugs to make you work.
To make you keep working. but yeah, so yeah, like I said, I went into this being harsh because I didn't want to just be like support it as it is. So
yeah,
y'all actually made me feel a little better about my score. So moving forward, speaking of scores, we're going to talk about the score. So we're talking about the music. I'm uncertain.
I'll start.
Oh, okay.
So I gave it an 8.
Okay.
So the big hits for this, and I kind of talked about this in our Young Justice episode, but essentially an anime opening and ending or a series opening and ending are so important to set the tone of the show. Okay, and
that is a postulate that you have put forward.
Like it is the elevator speech for the show to tell you exactly what you're getting into or what you're getting out of, and or to give more kind of like just context to the show itself. And the opening and the ending for the show are absolutely fabulous, like straight bangers. From there's a very specific kind of anime or like Japanese pop that kind of exists in only anime openings. And this kind of is just like the quintessential, like right to the edge of city pop to more of like a standard pop from the late 90s in Japan. And the thing that I like about it, and this is more on the visual kind of spectacle side, but the opening really gives you kind of just a little extra context for each of the characters and kind of the general, like it's basically telling you, even though you are seeing stuff, like each episode has, a very specific story, there are clearly other things that these characters are going through on a daily basis that are very unique to that. And the music helps just kind of solidify that, for basically the show, and it sets the tone. Now there are some very good moments within the show itself for a lot of the episodes, especially the fight with Norris. There's some really good background music. However, some of the earlier episodes, unfortunately, don't really have a lot to back it up for a couple of their fight scenes.
It can be a little empty.
It's just kind of a little empty, and they could have added a little bit more in there. Probably the two key episodes was episode 6, which is the desert episode, and then the fight with Norris, particularly right before it, whenever he is talking to Aina in the mountain, and he makes the decision to essentially go die, because that's what he's and we're kind of, I'll get into that for plot, but really he has this moment where he's like, if that's what you want, if you want everyone to escape, then I will sacrifice my life for that.
I will make it happen.
The music that they have for this moment is just so compelling, because it swells, and then it has the power shot of him walking right next to his suit as it walks beside him,
which is a little much, but I let it slide. we steered into rule of cool there, but we'll let that one slide.
That is okay. So that is like one of the coolest shots in Gundam they have ever done.
Oh no! That shot hits, but it's all rule of cool.
Well, because then you have him looking scowl faced, and then Aina looking towards him, and just like, you better not die, because, I don't care about you in a romantic way, but I care about you as a father figure. And the music just hits so hard for that it really supports a lot of the weight of that kind of scene. And they do that a couple times throughout the show, but like it's really towards the end of the series is when they really start kind of hitting you with those really big scores, where the beginning kind of doesn't have a lot of it.
All right, I'm gonna let Joel go.
Yeah, I'm gonna take it, because I'm gonna go ahead and say it. I gave it a 7.
Okay.
Yeah.
But intros and outros do not matter. So I thought it was thoroughly run of the mill, exactly like every other anime intro that I have ever seen.
How dare you?
Philistine. Pearls before swine.
However, I thought that the arrangements, the orchestral arrangements that were used throughout the bulk of the show were very imaginative and not like a typical sort of score that you would run into in just, let's say, an action show, right? So they were
they felt like they had thought behind them.
Right, exactly. And so there was a lot of really interesting and fun pieces throughout that supported the emotions of the scene, the swelling theme that you alluded to before with the speech of "I'm going to go sacrifice myself."
Yeah.
Without ever actually saying those words.
Oh yeah, right. It's all just understood, which is what makes the character
really
work
sells
so
it.
good.
Yeah. So yeah, there you go. I got my dig in, so I'm good.
I'm still
okay. No, stop.
Well, okay, but you did watch them, right?
Once.
A couple of times. Yeah.
Okay.
So
but did you actually watch it where like you had like all the context of like what's happening like in the whatever.
All right. So just like 08 MS team, we started with a banger intro. We had the meat in the middle. We're gonna have a banger outro. I gave it an 8. It's not the world's greatest ever. It's still really good.
Mm-hmm.
The intro is fire. The outro is what you need post most of these episodes.
Which is super chill, just Shiro hanging out, signing some command papers.
So I didn't bring it up in Spectacle, and I probably should have, but because it feeds into Spectacle. One, it's really great that everything in the intro, because so many animes give away some of their best moments in the intros.
Oh man, yeah,
they spoil themselves so much, and this is all. None of what is animated in the intro shows up in the show.
Yep,
at all. And I love the little bits of action, and also then you have like kind of just like snapshots where it's just the boring life of being a soldier because there's a lot of boredom.
Mm-hmm.
And then the flip side as well for the outro, which is just that essentially like a home recording while the music's playing, where everyone's just kind of getting a chance to show off their character. In a sense. And that's really Spectacle, but the music that's going with it is just great. And unlike the Philistine over here, I watched every intro, every outro, because I'm not missing those songs. Period.
I'm sing along level for those.
Yeah, no, I mean I don't know the language. It doesn't matter.
Over 20 years now.
But moving into the actual show itself, I think the music. So I looked down to see exactly the words I wrote because I remember writing them, and I don't know what happened to me because I wrote. Surprisingly diverse choices and lots of scenes where, and it stops, and I don't know what happened to that.
Had a stroke.
Yeah, no, then I had to like work or something. I don't know, but
oh no, plot twist. This isn't Steven. This is an android who thinks he's Steven, and that's when Steven died.
That's when I've been replaced. But the music choices throughout the show, I think they did a lot of good, kind of echoing what you were saying, where they did a lot of good choices of maybe stuff that you wouldn't necessarily say, oh yeah, it's definitely going to be in here because this is action adventure or whatnot. It was much more of an emotional choice. And I think that ultimately supports, because at the end of the day, basically everything that's Gundam is kind of an anti-war
propaganda.
I guess you could call it that, but it's very, everyone sees the big shiny suits and they fight each other, and that's great and that's wonderful. And then they're just getting force fed war bad.
Yeah.
So that fits this because, again, big shiny suits fighting, but that's not what we're not here for the action. We're here for the emotions of this, the emotional impacts of, what Mikhail is going through, what Shiro is going through, Karen is going through, Elidor, etc. And then also they have kind of the cheeky bits, like where Elidor requests his own song over the radio. So they just get to throw, during a pretty heavy scene where everyone is really down, they get to throw in this little pop song, and it's plot relevant, but it gets everyone kind of back in a better state of mind.
Well, I mean, because like up until that point in the episode, like it is emotion, drama, drama, and then like out of, then we get a really nice, pretty song, and then you're like, oh, he requested that.
Yeah, of course he did. No. So speaking of, since we're headed that way, let's just go right into some plot, and I'm going to go first.
Yeah.
Because this is mine.
I made this.
You made this.
I made this.
So I gave plot an 8.
Okay.
So there are some highs, there are some lows, and I want to talk about some highs, and we were just talking about it, the desert episode,
which is definitely probably the emotional climax of the.
Yeah, it's the bit we literally just said it, and I'm just going to say it again because it's worth saying. You have everyone at kind of this emotional low. You get a lot of kind of background and story from Mikhail and his narration, which could be a sin, but it's not here because they're helping. They're not telling you the story. They're giving you a side view into what's going on.
Yeah, and that's basically his vehicle to without him just basically giving like exposition.
Yeah, well, and he doesn't really have someone else that he can really talk to because he is the youngest member, kind of the most disrespected of the group. So it's not like he's going to sit down and have a heart-to-heart with Elidor.
Right, but like he's young, which he sort of shares with Shiro, but he's also not an officer.
Yeah,
so,
not in charge. Yeah,
so he doesn't get the artificial respect that Shiro does
right. And the people he would relate to are all a decade older than him and have just way different lives, essentially. But the whole bit with him where you constantly have the scenes where he keeps wanting to go back to the letter but he has to do his duties, and the impacts it has is just great, and kind of the consequences and how that plays out. The scene where Kiki steals it from him and is just like running through the desert with him chasing her while she's reading off the thing. So she thinks she's making fun of him, like, oh, you're so flirty. And she hits that point, she just kind of stops walking.
It's like, oh, this is a Dear John letter.
Yeah,
I'm gonna stop.
I think I'm done reading now. And Michaela's just collapsed on the ground. And then, of course, everyone hits this huge low. And I think it's actually really cool because I didn't necessarily pick up on it, right? But like at that point, Elidor's injured. He's not with the team.
Yeah.
And he is definitely a big part of it. He's a big voice.
Mm-hmm.
And for most of what they do, he is ultimately kind of glue for them because everything goes through him, right?
Well, and he's the foil for the team because he, like everyone else, is relatively stoic. I mean, like Shiro is like headstrong, but he also doesn't talk a lot.
Unless
talked at.
Elidor is the one that's just gonna off on his own. So suddenly, like the team is disjointed because he's not there, and everyone is at their lowest point, and then Elidor comes through in the clutch by doing what he's gonna do for himself, which is, I want to hear my own song. I'm gonna request it on the radio. And then everyone gets the good laugh, and it binds them back together.
Yeah,
that episode just so good. And all of the I'm gonna go back to Young Justice. Why not? I'm not gonna say that everything that happens in every episode is connected because it's not, and that's kind of the reality of a war. You're just gonna go on a patrol one day, and it's just gonna be a patrol and whatnot. But there's enough interconnected pieces. We kind of discussed this earlier where you couldn't just drop into an episode unless it's, one or two and just be guaranteed. Even dropping in at 2, you miss the whole connection between him and Shiro and Sanders and him and Ina. Like you missed the big point here. Like if you picked up at like episode 7, you're like, Shiro, what are you doing? What's going on?
Why are you trying to save this?
Why are we in love? Which there's some problems.
There's already problems.
So if we're I'm gonna let someone else ding them. I'm gonna set that one off to the side. I'm not gonna grab it. I want to grab it, but I'm not gonna grab it. But I mean, for the most part, it just flows. It works. The fights are good. They feel meaningful. They feel like they have impact. I love the small scale plot storytelling here. Yeah. Because, and again,
it's the KISS method. Keep it simple, stupid.
Yeah. Well, it's not Joel's knowledge to know this, but like so many Gundam fights are, well, I just shot 1,000 missiles and killed all the irrelevant mook suits. So now it's just me and the 2 people who matter to fight. And it's kind of like,
that's more of a Kogi Ace problem, but
okay. Anyway, yeah. But it does happen a lot.
It's a mecha problem.
It is absolutely a mecha problem. Yeah. Fair. And it's way better when it's just like, sure, do we know who this Zaku pilot is? No, but he's like a legitimate problem for Shiro, etc.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna throw this out.
I'll add it because I'm gonna let Joel go next, but I just wanted to add that a lot of it, I like a lot, a couple of the plot points and even like minor plot points of just like within scenes of whenever they basically have to make sure that they are not shooting the nuclear reactors in the Gundams to make sure they don't just kill everyone.
That's actually a negative for the plot.
Well, no. It
adds tension.
Yeah.
But it's not really how nuclear reactors work.
It doesn't matter.
You irradiate people. Yeah.
Okay. Anyways, Joel, you can go.
All right. So I also gave plot an 8.
Okay, fair.
I thought that in particular, Mikkel and Shiro's arcs were both really compelling.
Really good. Yeah.
Because, Mikkel, as we already alluded to, is kind of a stand-in for this is what war does to people, right? And then Shiro's arc is basically him going on a journey of questioning his own morality, because he starts out being, I mean, a little naive, but very gung-ho about fighting for his faction.
He's the good soldier. Yeah.
And he, through his connection to Aina, comes to a point of, well, the other side are all people, and that's a problem for me because I've never confronted that before. Right? They were just the bad guys.
They were monsters.
But he comes to view them as people, and it wasn't just that he makes a switch to pacifism, which I would feel would be kind of an unsatisfying conclusion to that abrupt shift in perspective, because that's not how he was originally portrayed. Right. So it would just be kind of like too far of a stretch for the character.
Yeah.
But for him to go all the way over to pacifism and try it on and be like, is this right? Because the other wasn't right. Is this right? And then for him to make the realization, no, I'm willing to fight. I'm even willing to kill, but it has to be for the immediate defense of someone that I am going to protect.
Yeah. For the right reasons.
Yeah. And so having that level of kind of philosophical debate in a character arc is something that I really like and really find intriguing. And so that was really compelling. On an episode to episode basis, they really benefited from the small scale, like you were talking about.
Yeah, so much.
They have a concrete mission that their team is being sent on, and they have a plan to do it, and the plan usually doesn't work, but they're working their plan, and and you can follow what's going on every step of the way.
Yeah,
because they have such a limited scope. And the only major problem, and it is a major problem, that I can really ding the plot for, is the fact that we go from Shiro and Aina meet one time in space, and he convinces her that they need to work together to survive, and they have an amicable parting where they manage to arrange it to where neither one of them ends up as a captive.
Right.
And which is what sets him down the line of being able to see his enemy as people instead of monsters. But the very next time they meet, he is professing his undying love for her.
Yeah.
Right. The whole time between, he is obviously infatuated with her and attracted to her, which is perfectly natural. If that's going to happen, like, I mean, that on that time scale is perfectly natural.
I mean, he is a soldier that 23-year-old soldier that has, a pretty girl locket that he can look at her picture and,
I love how long it takes for him to realize, oh, there's a photo on the backside of this.
Yeah. But it really needed another touch or a longer period of them being stranded together for there to be some basis for relationship.
Yeah.
And since that relationship is basically central to the conflict of the entire show, I knocked it a whole 2 points just for that.
Yeah. So basically there's maybe two reasons. I don't really know because, I wasn't in the production for this. So Takayuki Kanda, which was the original director that was meant to direct all 12-ish episodes, 11
we haven't even gotten into that. We have to actually discuss
about it.
Yeah. But he unfortunately died in 1996, and he essentially directed episodes 1 through 6, and then episodes 7 through 12 were basically taken up by Uminosuke Ida. And as far as I know, there was just a rough outline.
They're basically working off notes.
As far as I know, and the hearsay, of course, but it's definitely one of those things where some of that may have been lost in translation. Of maybe like episode 8 may have been more about him and Aina than basically him, like about the court martial and him trying to basically save everyone from the suits that were just kind of sitting around in the guerrilla camp.
Which that was a good episode.
It was a good episode.
Just because you kind of got to see the whole spectrum of military soldiers involved. Yeah. You have the one guy who's just basically, if he wasn't in the military, he would kind of be like a pirate or a thief, basically. Yeah. You have just the good family man. and then the officer who just wants her to get her troops home, and how that kind of unravels into a disaster as it goes.
If he would have paid, like, it's kind of one of those things where if the guy that basically starts the conflict, if he would have just picked up anyone else except for Kiki, then I'm sure that it wouldn't have been a conflict
quite so dramatic.
She's a fiery redhead by definition.
Well, I mean, also
she's also like
village leader's daughter.
Like she is a local treasure. So
yeah. Is it on me now?
I mean, I don't know, Joel.
Yeah, cool. No,
okay.
I've said my piece.
Okay, so yeah, there we go. I was on the wrong page. There we go. I gave plot an 8. Wow.
Hey,
go figure.
Yeah,
we're
we go.
kind
Just
of on the same line.
this one.
We mostly pretty much covered everything. The love story felt a little bit too abrupt. And it didn't, like, I think if they would have had just one more chance encounter before that to just kind of solidify, hey, I'm attracted to you. And like, she may not be attracted to him then, but she can see his kindness and the general idea of like, oh, he's a person too, kind of thing. And like, just one more small chance encounter would have helped.
She was at that point at the end of the episode 1. Like, the thing is, episode 1 and the way it kind of resolves, if they weren't basically forced to be apart, like they could have already been off on like a crush kind of thing.
Yeah,
like that kind of like, oh, fireworks kind of thing. Like at the end, like any other anime, that's just, oh, we've got our two main characters. This is what happens, but.
So, and that's kind of the thing too, is like, she is a 20-year-old girl who has essentially lived a very suppressed, sheltered life because her brother is a just not a good person. And
we've barely really hit on him much.
Well, Guinea is a pretty, he's a very good antagonist, in the sense of, exactly what he's about. How what he's going to do, be like, not in the sense of like, oh, I see it coming, because you do, but you also know exactly why he's doing it. And his motivations, while twisted, are exactly in line with what you would expect out of basically a brilliant scientist that knows that he has limited time left. And he finally achieves his true goal of creating this massive, mobile armor that is more than enough to destroy the enemy Federation base.
Which ultimately is the result of his quest for a brand of immortality.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah.
And he will do anything, including kill all of the scientists that helped him make this reality, to make sure that it was only his.
Yeah.
And Aina just happens to be the only reason why he can actually pilot it, just because like she is the actual physically capable one of doing it.
Right.
And, because of that, she has kind of been forced into this life that she probably didn't want to have. And, like, every time that she has been in combat, like even whenever she knew that she wasn't fighting against Shiro or anything, like, she still tried to not fight if she didn't absolutely have to save Norris or one of her air support units, where like she would be basically out of the fight until she's like, okay, I have to make this happen to make sure that they don't die. And she's an impulsive 20-year-old. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't try and justify the bit. And like, it's kind of funny too, because you get, coming off of the mountain episode, you get that bit, right, where she gets picked up and they ask, well, what about the Fedi officer? And probably one of the best dubbed voice acting performances as far as I'm concerned, because she's got the helmet on, she's completely faceless, and she does that as cold as she can, eliminated. And it's like, man, that was really weird way to talk. And then dealing with her brother, he like immediately pegs, you're dressing differently.
Yep.
She utterly fails at lying to him. And it's like, oh, like that was the only way she could poke her face, was like, I put my helmet on, you can't see my face. I did this as cold as I could. And it's just like, oh, okay, yeah, this makes more sense. I really also liked kind of the progression of their relationship, because when you're introduced to Aina and Guineas, you're kind of like, man, this is kind of weird. Y'all are brother and sister, y'all are a little strange with each other.
A little too close.
Yeah, just a little. And then as it goes along, once Guineas is accomplishing what he needs, he doesn't care about Aina or need her to be present, or even like when they're trying to find her after the crash landing, and he just leaves the control room, and Norse is like, "You're just gonna walk away?" And he's like, "It means she's won. The beacon's not there. I'm totally unconcerned." And it's like, no, he just doesn't care. Period.
Yeah.
And I liked that progression because it makes the rift between them feel more normal. Because as weird a relationship as they have, there shouldn't be a rift there unless something like that occurred.
Well, and essentially the payoff in the final episode, whenever he tries to kill her and he ends up failing, and then realizes that he fails, and he's like, okay, well, fine, I'm going to blow everything up now.
Yeah,
and it is an earned climax because you can tell that like deep down he hates her in the sense of like, well, you can do everything that I can't.
Yeah.
And it's like, I have this technological thing that I've created, but essentially I'm not going to be here anymore. And I'm jealous of the fact that I couldn't get rid of you, and then you're still going to be here.
Yeah. Okay. So I think we've covered the plot pretty well.
I did want to ding
Go for it.
One little minor thing.
Go for it.
And that was at the end of the asterisk last episode.
Oh, we're going to get about that's where we're about to be heading.
Episode 11
go for it.
Where there's the voiceover of Shiro and Aina are missing. They can't find them. They're presumed dead. And like, I mean, we know that they made it out and got away, but they've kind of escaped from the war is the ending. But they didn't go ahead in the voiceover and say the war ended soon after that. And I think that was actively a bad choice.
Yeah. Because
the show, while set in the war, had nothing to do with the war.
It just needed the war as the backdrop.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, I can agree with that, because and I feel that that's more of just a war film trope just in general, but it's not a good one.
Yeah. It also, because this is a show that is set in a larger universe of connected material.
Yeah.
It sets it more firmly in the overarching timeline, which I feel like would be a temptation to do.
Yeah.
Even though doing it doesn't add or maybe even detracts a little bit from the project as a whole.
Yeah. I can agree with that.
Okay. So let's talk some elephant in the room, because we keep talking about the final episode, asterisk, episode 11. So episode 11 ends and they do the final little scene and credits roll and it says the end.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so I'm going to say this as someone who has been a fan of the show, saw it when it hit
over
US,
20 years.
Yeah, when it hit US release. Episode 12 never made US release. I had never seen or known of its existence
until today
when I went to go back to check something and was like, oh, that's funny. There's a couple little extra things where I can tell this is the intro and the outro in a separate by itself.
Yeah.
And then I was like, but what are you? Like, you are an episode 12. What in the actual heck is going on? Like, I messaged and was just like, am I like, is the android replacing me right now?
Is this the Mandela effect?
Yeah, no, like I never seen this before and never want to see it again.
So the episode we're talking, episode 12, Last Resort, is essentially the plot where Michael and Kiki are kind of like, the war is ended.
This is post-war.
They are basically trying to track down where Shiro and Aina kind of ended up.
Mm-hmm.
And they end up kind of getting kidnapped by essentially survivor children that are essentially on the Xeon side of the conflict.
Mm-hmm.
And they go through this weird thing where they end up like hinting the fact that they just buried Aina, but then they dig up a grave that they said was Shiro. It's just a really weird episode. I don't even know how to describe it.
And ultimately, so like, it felt like a jumping off point for a new story.
Yeah.
Yes.
But then they wrapped it up with our characters find where Shiro and Aina have been, and like but it's exactly the same ending that we already had.
That we already had.
They're fine. Yeah, we know
we
they're
saw,
fine.
we saw them in the final
because there's no additional information. I mean, we learn
they're pregnant.
That they're going to have a kid and they've got a cabin in the woods.
Yeah,
like, Kiki is devastated.
And Kiki is completely devastated by the fact that she definitely has no chance now.
But like that does not progress the already resolved arc.
No, exactly. It was just such a weird choice.
Like there were some things that added a little bit, right? So we have, Mikhail has the photo of the girl he's written to throughout the war, and it's her having been married with a baby. He's obviously scribbled out the dude's face, and he's obsessed with this. He's drinking heavily, depressed. He's like, okay, that's kind of like, if that's kind of where we were, and like, hey, they wanted to like jump a series off of them like trying to search through this and hijinks ensue, cool. And then we hit the children's survivor, like
it was just weird.
I'm really curious as to Joel's opinions, because I at least have background within the universe to understand what's going on with the kids.
Well, I knew that they were part of some experiment, because that was obvious, because they were being treated by the doomed crew in the intro to the episode as important and valuable.
Right. And it because they're children of the corn borderline. It's creepy.
Yeah.
Like, there's some creepy kids. And there's a lot of weird stuff. We're going out in the rain to dig up a grave that doesn't actually contain a person. And they're terrified that you're going to steal their names. And just, there are a lot of decisions made that are just bizarre.
Which if you're then going to have another 10 episode series to explore these things that you've introduced, then
sure,
okay.
Why not? Yeah.
So basically the hinted backstory is essentially these kids were the first batch of cyber new types, which are basically like space psychics. And
spoilers for a completely different show.
It's like that's just part of the universe.
It's the main theme of Gundam is the concept of new types.
And basically, a new type is an evolution of humans that live in space.
It's considered an evolution. There's it's kind of one of the points of Xeon trying to break free and all this other. It becomes very central, but obviously the kids were an attempt to kind of create artificial
new types, which is why they can all like talk with each other in their minds.
Yeah, which is why they're children of the corn, because they don't have to talk to each other.
They can just stand there and communicate.
The doctor who is referenced in the stuff they find in the ship is like the founder of that concept and the program. Is kind of the giveaway. And
that
also
deals with like cloning and other things.
Yeah, also the swan.
Okay.
Goose Girl. Anyways.
It's just a really weird deviation from what was a story that was already done.
Everything. And the best selling point of 08 is that it's so grounded. You don't have the child, teenager, space wizard, prodigy kid.
Yeah.
You just have people, and it kind of messes it up. So all this is to say, we didn't include episode 12 when we were doing any kind of judgments on this, because it would have impacted scores and
substantially.
Yeah, like you can recover a bad start with a great finish. It is really difficult to carry the momentum of a good start with a bad finish, and this is that latter case.
Yeah. Well, and it's one of those things too, because both of you guys essentially watched the English dub, which was broadcast here in the US. Episode 12 was never broadcast. We can get around with a loophole there, that because I've known about the episode for a long time, but most of the time whenever I rewatch the show, which is about once a year, I always skip it. I just like, I'm good. I've seen it like maybe once,
Twice now.
Even back when Hulu had it on, like first had 08 on, it stopped at 11. Did not go to 12.
Yeah, so at some point, maybe whenever they did like a Blu-ray release or something, they may have added it in to
the 50th anniversary of Gundam. They gave it back to us. We didn't want it, but they gave it to us.
Yeah. Okay, so we need to move to the entertainment score, which is essentially the final score, which doesn't go into the aggregate. And just how did you feel about enjoying the show? Would you watch it again?
Yeah,
those kind of things. I'm just going to go ahead and start out on a high note. I gave it a 10. Like I said earlier, this is not actually my favorite Gundam show. Gundam Zeta, or Zeta Gundam is definitely my 100% favorite. It is. But if you want to watch something that has low time investment, this is the show.
Yeah.
You can pick it up, you can watch it, and you will enjoy generally every minute of it. It has a banger opening and ending. I'm staring at you, Joel. Then it has great action scenes, well animated, good character development, and I mean, it's just a fantastic show.
Yeah.
And I watch it at least once a year, just because I can just kind of throw it on. I know what I'm going to watch, and I'll toss on the dub just so I can work while I'm doing it, and then I'm like, ooh, this scene's coming up, or this cut of animation's coming up, and I'll just go and watch it.
Yeah.
Anyways, so this is my favorite Gundam show.
Yep.
I've watched it multiple times on my own without needing prodding. I gave it a 9.
What?
Well, so, okay, I did say I tried to scale that. I don't want to just sit down. It would be really boring if I sat and just, 10, 10, 10, 10. But I tried to be kind of reasonable.
But this is entertainment. This has all subjective content.
Right. Okay. But there are also some problems on an entertainment scale of, can I just throw this on the TV when like my mom is in the room? No. Could it like just outright? No. I mean, they're at war and like, they're naked pinups on the wall. And so like, is it a really accurate depiction of soldiering? Yeah, I think it does a pretty good job of that, but that's not necessarily entertaining all the time.
Oh, that's fair.
Sometimes you need the mood. And I think, so it's also one of those things where there's no like an individual episode where I just turn it on and be like, yeah, maybe I'll watch, Nora's fight scene again.
That's generally the easiest one to pick up is just throw that on.
But you really need kind of the build up throughout to really get everything out of it as you go.
Yeah, you just watch the other 9 episodes before it.
Right, yeah.
And then you watch that one.
Yeah, so that is kind of an issue in entertainment because you actually have to pay attention. You need to go in and watch. You will not get the same benefit of just picking up one episode. Even me having watched it multiple times, right?
Man,
I'll still watch episodes because it's at that point it's just nostalgia, right?
You are an embarrassment.
Oh my gosh, hush. But at the end of the day, it is the best Gundam, period. Fight me. No space, teenage, wizard, prodigies, just normal people doing things.
Don't talk about Camille that way.
I will absolutely talk about Camille that way. Joel?
All right, so we have largely, with the exception of intros and outros, have largely been on the same page, and I've said a lot of really good things about the show. So understand when I lay down a score of 5.
Ooh, boy.
That's brutal.
There were a lot of things that I really, really loved about the show. I loved the philosophical questions that are raised and probed. I loved the sort of slice of life with the background of a war that the main characters are caught up in, but not fully supportive of, but
big butt.
The sexualization of particularly Kiki with
it's a little weird,
with the issue being the fact that she is underage and is just being like openly ogled by the main character, who then is like dismissive of her, saying that she's a kid, which she then brings up, well, then why did you look at me? And he's like, well, you're good to look at. It's like, what? What?
Who wrote this?
And then the other people from her own village are like, hey, not even we've seen that. It's like, way to go, And Aina is treated similarly by the admiral, which that is a tool to show that someone is a jerk, and so fine,
it
whatever.
Yeah,
but like, you did it with our main character too. Why are you doing that?
Yeah,
and and so it's not even like the naked pinup shots, right, on the soldiers' machines and bunks and whatnot. Like that's war. That's one thing. It's really the underage aspect to it that was such an enormous turnoff. I had a very difficult time making it through the first half of the show.
No. That's
totally fair.
Easily an incredibly jarring thing that just doesn't have to exist.
Yeah.
And it doesn't really change anything if it didn't exist in the show.
Right. And like
that's
her being a kid and having a crush on this dashing, handsome young officer is totally great. I'm there for that arc.
Yeah.
It's just, I really wish that it was handled in a less offensive way.
Yeah, I mean, and that's unfortunately part of the anime culture, especially around the mid 90s or just the 90s in general, where, you know, there's a despairing age difference of basically what is of age here and what is of age over there. I'm not saying it's right, but I mean, that's just kind of,
well, it's just
kind of one of those.
It's a cultural factor that if you're not aware of could really catch you off guard.
But like they even call it out themselves in that scene in the show, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah, no, I mean it's like, and I'm not defending it because it's definitely one of those things where like if I'm telling someone, oh, you should watch 08th MS Team, just be aware the second episodes there's some 17-year-old titties.
Whoa. Well, because I mean, even when you have the episode where you have the Zeon forces are in her village and they're just trying to get food, right?
Yeah.
And you have the one guy who we sell off as the jerk, the instigator who causes this. Well, even he's like, oh, she's a little young, but you know, beggars can't be choosers or whatever he throws out there. When it's like, oh, cool, we're establishing she's a jerk. Like we also did this with our main character.
Yeah.
It is a difficult piece to just have thrown in your face, and it's more so because if it didn't exist in the show, it wouldn't change anything.
Yeah, it was just fan service for the sake of fan service.
Yeah.
Which is unfortunate. Whenever you have the rest of the show, which is really very well enjoyable. Put together, and it's unfortunately just part of the culture of the time, and it still exists now for a lot of anime, and hopefully the more it gets popularized and everything, a lot of those tropes will hopefully go away or get relegated to shows that are of lesser quality that kind of what you're getting into.
Yeah.
Okay, so Joel, talking about 08th MS Team and everything like that, would you ever watch another Gundam after watching this? Because this is your first entry into it.
No, I would be certainly open to it. There's the realism aspect of this one is really appealing.
Yeah.
And so to be told that this is as realistic as it gets.
It is about as realistic as it gets.
So it's
sadly.
So I'm not immediately drawn to wanting to consume more because I'm like, well, this is probably the best that I was going to get from a meeting with my taste perspective. But it didn't put me off of it.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, that's because it's one of those things where whenever you are kind of showing someone something new, right? You always want to know if they're going to be interested to watch other things of the same light, because then you have more stuff to talk about.
Yeah.
And being an anime fan has always been kind of my goal to find things that my friends would enjoy, even if they don't watch the medium, so I can like at least talk a little bit about it. Because I consume so much that I'm never going to get to talk about all the shows that I watch besides just with my wife because we watch them together. But Gundam is one of those kind of universal franchises that do bring a lot of people kind of in to where you can, like, everyone's seen either Gundam Wing or MS Team or G Gundam, and there's so many there's so many different franchises within the franchise that like you can always find a common ground.
Yeah, and that's actually kind of interesting. You're not going to ask me that question?
No, I already know. You are. we have Gundam build days where we just watch an entire season of Gundam.
Yeah, it will not watch. It's in the background.
Well, yeah, it exists.
But yeah, that is actually kind of interesting because there is a risk of, well, I want to float out to you the best example of this to get you hooked, and then it's like, good news, buddy. it's all downhill from here.
Yeah,
that's a tough sell.
Well, yeah, because then like, do you show them something bad and then hope they enjoy it, and then show them something good?
Yeah, like that's a tough play, because it's like, well, do I throw like Wing Gundam at you and just hope that you can like revel in the insanity,
the ridiculousness?
Yeah, the whole I'm gonna betray you by dropping you out the back of a cargo plane that you have to know, like you sat in this chair, you have to know that this is going to open underneath you. It's a cargo plane. And then as you fall to the air, I'm going to shoot you. That is an actual scene that happens in Wing. It is, and it's a big betrayal.
Gundam Wing is ridiculous.
It is bonkers. And that was I referenced that just because that was my introduction, right? I guess kind of. I don't know. It's just Macross obviously isn't a Gundam.
No, it's Gundam.
But
it's not Gundam.
But it's mecha.
Yeah, it's mecha.
And that was really probably my hook into mecha, as opposed to like when Wing hit Toonami. Yeah, where that definitely was like, oh yeah. And then I've watched. I'm trying to remember what it was. I think I've just watched Mobile Suit Gundam and was like, who are these people? What is Wing's not how Gundam works? Oh, oh no.
Yeah,
I have to commit. I have to figure this out. So, yeah, that's a good question of. Obviously, I'm just trying to think of if there's anything else that's more. I mean, War in the Pocket.
Well, I mean, you could have watched Stardust Memory, which is 0083, which is basically Top Gun with Gundams. The plot is nowhere near even as close to good as 08 The Mess Team. But the visuals are very good, and it's about as close to realistic as you're going to get. But a lot of it happens in space, and Gundam space is kind of liquid space.
It's a little Star Warsy.
It's a little Star Warsy, like it, because basically Mobile Suit Gundam came out after Star Wars came out, and it definitely pulled a lot of those kind of tropes with it, and they get a little bit more full 3D space later on in some of the shows, but for the most part, it's still kind of liquidy, milky space.
Gotcha. Yeah. No, it has a lot of. I mean, there's new types are essentially just Force users. Just being honest. Yeah, that's how it goes. Yep. We'll have to come up with something else that we can introduce for Gundam. We have to,
we're going to do G Gundam.
I mean, Joel would probably enjoy it.
Did you ever watch Dragon Ball Z?
I watched Dragon Ball Z Abridged.
I mean, that's actually kind of, if you watch the dub for G Gundam, it's kind of the same.
That's basically the same thing, actually. Yeah, I was going to say, like, G Gundam is pretty close to Dragon Ball Z.
It's about as absurdist as you can get.
Yeah, it is up there in terms of
ridiculous.
Why? I don't understand it. He could cut the tree down with this rusty sword. Why can't I? I'm going to stand here until I can. Actual moment that happens in G Gundam. Yeah. Anyways, so we'll have to continue our trials and
foray into getting Joel to watch more Gundam.
Yeah, and then we have to buy him a model. Like, now you can build.
Now you can come to build days with us.
Yeah,
it's like the first one's free.
Yeah, I mean, I have done that a lot to a lot of people where I just give them Gundam models, and I'm like, you can come build it with me with all of my other friends,
all my other nerds. Alrighty, well. I think on that note, that is definitely all the time we have for this episode. So until next time, I'm Steven.
I'm Andrew.
And I'm Joel.
And as always, every spoiler was intended. Thank you for tuning in. If you like what you heard, you can support the show for as low as $1 at patreon.com/spoilersintendedpodcast. We also have a Discord server and would love to have more people joining in the conversation. Links are in the description below. Thank you.